Okay, thanks. I would like to welcome everybody to the regular Pelham Board of Education meeting of Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the
I
flag
pledge
of the
allegiance to
United
the flag
States of
of
America
the States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
and
liberty,
liberty
justice
and justice for all.
for all. Okay.
It's a lot harder to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Sue, could we please have a reiteration of the executive session motions?
Yes, the board met in executive session to discuss the employment of a particular person.
Thank you. So as we begin this board meeting under unusual and unprecedented conditions, I wanted to reiterate our board's appreciation, gratitude, and pride for our administrative team, teachers, and staff. During the past several weeks, they have stepped up to the plate and adapted to unprecedented changes in how we provide education to our students. The administrative team and our teachers have worked around the clock for the past few weeks to thoughtfully create the next phase of our distance learning approach so that it is sustainable should the school closure continue to be extended. It has been no small feat to transform a K-12 system, which is built on face-to-face social interaction, to an online system that is sustainable for students, teachers, and families. They have gone above and beyond while dealing with all of the same challenges we are all facing in our personal lives. We believe these incredible efforts, while grappling with the fear and stress this virus has caused in their own homes and families, are helping to restore some sense of normalcy to parents and children across the town. And we commend them for these efforts. We are thankful for the community's patience with us as our school community adjusts to these changes. It seems that everything we once did within our school system has been altered by the current conditions. Our educational leaders are trying to make the most sound decisions in the best interest of our students, all while looking to unanswered questions from the state and chasing what seems to be a moving target. We could have never conceived that our community and country would ever be shaken in the way COVID-19 has taken over our lives in the past couple of weeks. We are equally thankful to the many Pelham community leaders, organizations, and businesses who have collectively stepped up to help those in need and to help coordinate with the school district. While this experience is unlike anything we have encountered before and is certainly less than ideal, I am confident that our community will continue to be united in purpose and will come out stronger on the other side. During the coming weeks and months, however long this new normal lasts, we will carry on with board business as close to usual as possible. We plan to continue to meet our district and board committees and to stay within our scheduled board meetings, and we will continue to be in touch. Until then, on behalf of the board, I send my best wishes for good health to everyone in our community. I wanted to mention a side note to members of the public who wanted to offer public comment. We're doing this obviously in a virtual meeting style. If you would like to submit public comment, please do so via my email, jddomenico, DEDOMENICO@pelhamschools.org prior to the 9:30 deadline. And please state your name as usual and your mailing address. Thank you. So Dr. Champ, we would love to have a superintendent's report.
Cheryl, you're still on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll get used to this. So good evening. It's so wonderful to see everybody. And Jessica, thank you so much for the kind words. I have to second everything you said about our administrative team and our teachers. The administrative team has been working nonstop for weeks now, really to, as we keep saying, you know, building the plane while we're flying it. We're literally rebuilding our entire education system in a format that is probably 180-degree opposite from what we strive to do every day. So it's been quite a labor of love. It's been quite exhausting. And I just have to really share my appreciation for the entire administrative team and all of their endless hard work that they're doing with just such attention to detail, thoughtfulness, reflectiveness, and quality. I also want to thank our teachers who have been willing to come to the table over and over to deal with every change that has come our way. And what we were really proud to do today was to start to launch the next phase of our learning plan. And one that I believe is really one of the most supportive plans out there. As I speak with colleagues, we were at a little bit of a disadvantage when we started. It was an intentional disadvantage, if I put it that way. As educators, we had really been attentive to screen time for our youngest learners. And we have not been using Google Classroom at the elementary because we didn't want that to be our primary vehicle for instruction for our youngest learners. That being said, when things changed and we had to all of a sudden pivot, that wasn't something that was in place for us, whereas it was in many other districts. So that was part of our initial challenges that we faced. But again, everyone was willing to come to the table, do what needed to get done to make that happen, because we realized very quickly that that was such a crucial tool in this type of environment. So stellar work by John Sabalos, who in the midst of being sick himself, really put himself on the line nonstop to make sure that that happened. We worked with a very small tech team, great support from BOCES in that, and he was able to pull off a feat that most districts take months to put in place with his staff double the size of what we had. And he was able to put that in place for us in a matter of a few short days. So I think tremendous thanks and appreciation need to go to him and to the entire administrative team who also worked side by side with him to troubleshoot, plan, think about all the different aspects of what we would need to communicate to students and to parents so that we could pull this off. And today we did have some link problems. We know that. John was buried in about 250 emails, I think, within 1 hour. But those issues we're working through piece by piece. And thanks to our community for being so patient. We believe what we put together is hopefully the substantive plan that will see us through whatever our closure winds up being. We recognize right now that we had closed through the 13th. The governor has closed us through the 14th, but we all recognize the reality of going back to school on the 14th is probably not realistic. So we're going to continue to watch the guidance as that rolls out. And we believe the plan we have in place now is one that will be able to sustain us long-term, whatever that may look like. We appreciate the community's patience and flexibility as we've navigated through all those changes. And I think it's important to understand, and this will go into the next point, the moment by moment changes that have been happening in our world and happening internally within the district, but also within the state. Literally the moment we figure one thing out, we get another curveball and have to either undo what we just did or redo it or change it in some way, or just add the next big mountain to climb right following that. So as we were preparing all the final details to launch this new planning, that's when the news about the spring break issue started to surface. And one of the things I've seen through all of this process is very often something will come out verbally from the governor's office, and then there'll be a whole lot of scuttlebutt and clarification needed that takes at least 24 to 48 hours before the dust settles on it. So one of the things that I've learned is don't jump the minute you hear one thing. Wait, let people ask the questions, let advocacy happen, let clarifications happen. So that's exactly what has happened now with spring break. As superintendents across the region, we all decided a week ago, yes, we're going forward with spring break as planned. Communities are exhausted, parents are exhausted, staff are exhausted, administrators are exhausted, and everyone had planned it for the week. So a week ago, we all agreed to that. Saturday afternoon, a representative from the governor's office says education is expected to happen through the spring break. So then the 24 to 48 hours of scuttlebutt and worry and clarification all then happens. And so then next couple of days roll by, conversations start, guidance starts, but the actual state education department guidance about spring break did not hit email boxes until this morning. So a lot of what has been going on is waiting for that clarification and understanding what the rules of engagement are so that we can then thoughtfully create a plan. So for us, and we didn't want to put something out before speaking with the board about this. So the governor, in light of the new executive order, has mandated that childcare, food service, and continuation of learning plans be extended through every day between April 1st and April 14th, regardless of whether districts have spring break planned or not. Being that it was such a last minute change and recognizing that there's so many pressures on our families. We discovered through this, there's no easy win. Some people may view things as overwhelming and just too stressful to manage, whereas other families view things as not enough, wanting more, and then we get the full range in between. So knowing that, and then also recognizing next week, part of why spring break was scheduled for when it was is due to a number of religious holidays and celebrations of those holidays. So we recognize that many of our families do have family engagements, religious observances in the coming week. So we wanted to be sensitive to all these dynamics, and also to the fact this wasn't necessarily the plan that we had in place for next week. So what our teachers have stepped up and come up with a plan because they again have worked in partnership with us through this and really want to be there for their students. We've come up with a plan that's slightly modified from what we started this week. Teachers are going to be launching out materials on Friday through their Google Classrooms. At each level, it'll be slightly different, but tailored to the grade level, so that really two things. Any work that students have not yet completed, whether it's been recent work, or you'll hear later in the conversation at the secondary level, if it's any outstanding work from third quarter, that's next week will be the time to make up any work that students haven't completed. This will especially help our elementary folks too, because we know today's lessons were much more substantive than what students have had. And we're looking for feedback over the next week or two about to try to gauge how much that work is. So for the students who don't get through today's work and Thursdays and Friday, they'll have all of next week to continue to complete those lessons that were pushed out, as well as the teachers are putting together some additional extended learning opportunities. So at the elementary, it'll probably be things like IXL and other online programs that students can engage in meaningfully and at their appropriate level. The middle school, the teachers are working together to put together, we call them choice boards, a bingo board where there's assignments in each subject area and students can pick those that are of interest to them. And then at the high school, again, it's opportunity for students to make up any missing work from third quarter, as well as teachers are pushing out some really what are kind of longer term assignments to focus on next week so that they can do follow up with their teachers the following week. We will not be having live time sessions next week, but teachers definitely will be available via email to provide any clarifications and support for students as needed. And we think this plan will continue learning, will be, honor the spirit and the letter of what has been requested by the governor's office, but will also allow the flexibility and a little bit of respite that so many folks need at this point in time. It's really a lot for everyone to be balancing. And we keep saying the social emotional wellness comes first. The learning will follow. So that is our plan. We wanted to, I got a couple more things I want to touch on, but we'll come back to that to see if the board had any questions or thoughts on that. And then, once we've had this conversation here, we will be putting that notice out later tonight so that the community is aware of that. We'll be talking tonight too, just to touch on a couple of things, and we'll come back to spring break. Dr. Garcia has been working with the administrative team to address a number of academic issues that have been on people's minds. So we'll be talking about third quarter grades, we'll be talking about AP exams and things like that later on tonight. Also, Jim Rickey in his report, and certainly with the bond steering report, we'll be talking a little bit about budget and the impact of COVID-19 on budget forecasts and how we may need to reshape some of our approach there, as well as construction. It really is going to show you that so many ways in which COVID has changed all of our lives, not just in the fact that we're all sitting at home, but it's really affecting things broadly. Again, just want to thank and appreciate the flexibility and involvement of our community, our board, our staff, in helping our way through this. Feedback has been very valuable and is really helping us to shape our next steps in ways that we hope will be responsive to our students, most importantly, and to our community. I should say, as an aside, we are continuing both principal search processes for the high school as well as Siwanoy, and we're looking forward to progress on those and some potential appointments within the next 2 to 4 weeks. So stay tuned on that. And I want to thank the Pelham Together Junior League and Civics for their ongoing partnership. They've been side by side with us, whatever we've needed. They are Johnny on the spot and really reached out to help with anything. And I see the work they're continuing to do to support the community. So just want to really recognize their work and thank them for their thoughtfulness and their faithfulness to supporting our students. And I just, of course, want to keep in mind all those in our community that are struggling health-wise. Appreciative every day for Senator Biagi's updates with really clear, up-to-date numbers on how this is impacting us locally and with resources to help folks. And we just keep them in our thoughts and prayers, and as well as the folks that are beginning to struggle through financial issues as a result of this. And there's obviously long-term impacts on both sides. So we all have a lot on our plates, and we are, I think, the kinder and more gracious we can be with one another, the more it's going to help each of us to get through this and be stronger for it on the other side. So with that, I just wanted to go back to the spring break plan and see if the board had any questions or clarifications they wanted to raise at this point before we launch that officially to the community.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
It's Sue Childs.
Yep.
Can you explain, so we will be in full compliance with direction that's come down from the state? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. The state has not specified a whole lot of detail at all about what is expected in our learning plan. And we do have an approved learning plan. And that actually the approval was even based on our first iteration, our first 2 weeks of that plan. So I think definitely what we're doing is in compliance with what's expected. We're offering learning opportunities. There is opportunity for teacher support through that time. So I do feel that we are able to adhere to that. And certainly our childcare programs are continuing and food service through that time.
Thank you.
I have a question as well.
Yeah.
By complying with this, does that mean that we will not have any financial penalty for not achieving 180 days of instruction?
That's in the category of moving targets. I believe yes. I mean, that is the intent. The governor's order basically said districts are expected to continue all three of those elements: food, childcare, and their learning continuity of learning plans through the break in order to be eligible for the waiver of the 180 days should that be needed. I think what most districts are realizing is that 180 days is really becoming irrelevant. As long as our understanding is as long as we comply with the directives, that there will be, when we get on the other side of this, I think we'll be able to do a little bit of a retroactive look back to make sure that we're in compliance. What is helpful to us is because we didn't use any snow days. We do still have some flexibility there. And we may also, originally I had thought to bring a copy of the calendar for reapproval of the board, but in light of this change with spring break, superintendents collectively felt it was better to wait on making any formal changes to calendars. And then once we do get clear guidance on the other side of this crisis, then we could go back and fix, moving things, because we are looking at, obviously, I'll use an example, April 13th was supposed to be part of spring break. We've already decided that's going to be an instructional day. So that's one day that we're already pulling back into use. We do have potentially the Friday before Memorial Day as another day that we may turn back into an instructional day, to your point of trying to make sure that we are covering our bases so that we do not put the district in a position of losing even a day's aid.
Cheryl, I have two questions. I know, as you said, that the direct guidance finally fell in everybody's laps this morning, the actual clarification, which we can now act on. So I don't expect you to know the exact answer, but when might students start to hear from their teachers about some of those long-term assignments so they have a better feel for what that looks like? And then also, I know there's concern, having listened in on that call on Saturday, they haven't yet made a decision about Regents exams.
Right.
Have we heard yet about AP exams and exactly what that looks like? But I know because decisions haven't been made, parents, particularly at the upper levels, are concerned about feeling behind and not prepared. AP exams come up very quickly.
Yes.
So to what extent might students who are in Regents or AP exams without that guidance be able to sort of feel like they're not continually falling behind next week?
Yeah. So a couple different answers. Teachers should hear about next week's plan from their teachers. Some got a little bit ahead of it, so we kind of had to put a little halt there. But by Friday, for sure, the assignments will be pushed out on Friday through Google Classroom. So students should have everything they need for next week at some point Friday afternoon. And as far as APs, Steve and the team are going to be addressing that later on tonight when he does his report. He's going to bring them into the conversation to give at least the current status of AP exams, courses, et cetera. So you get that answer shortly. And Regents exams, we have not received any direction from the State Education Department yet. They keep saying guidance is coming, it's on their radar, they're thinking about it, but they have not made a decision yet on that. So as far as things relating to APs and to third quarter, after tonight's discussion, again, we anticipate putting that information out probably tomorrow or worst case Friday for parents and students, so they know kind of what's changed and what to expect with third quarter grades and APs.
Thank you. I know this falls in the category of absolutely pressing issues that we don't have all the answers
Exactly.
for, and I can understand the anxiety around it, and yet
Yeah.
I understand
Yeah.
where your hands are tied in some places too.
Yeah, and the last thing we want to do is put out incorrect information. So I think that's where we're trying to be very measured and make sure that we've got all of our ducks in a row, and that so that we can help make the best decisions to best position students for the future. Okay, that's
Any
all
other
for me
questions or
tonight.
comments about spring break? Okay.
Okay.
So this brings us to our Board of Education committee reports. Jess, I believe you have an update on.
Jessica, I think we missed meeting minutes here.
I might have missed it. Hold on one second. You're right. I skipped right to superintendent. So Millie, for the purposes of the minutes, I'm going back to 3.1. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 26, 2020, regular meeting of the superintendent's budget overview?
So moved.
So moved.
So I
Second.
thank Wendy
Second.
for his first and John for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, John, for pointing that out. So that brings us to 4.2, Board of Education Committee reports. Jess, can you please give us a bond steering update?
Right. So we had bond steering last week, and we actually had bond steering this week as well. We had a meeting on Thursday, 3:26, and a meeting on Monday, 3:30, to continue our discussions. Similar to what Cheryl's referring to, things are constantly changing right now. So it was actually helpful that we had a second day to extend our conversations. So with the New York State on pause and all the COVID-19 regulations, we were able to discuss what implemented procedures are happening on the current sites that we have at Hutchinson. So we made sure that all workers have the appropriate PPE, and there's now sanitation stations on site, and they're all practicing social distancing. So related to our sites, we're in full compliance with what's required there. The other point of the meeting was to review the bids that we received on Prospect Hill and the middle school, high school exterior stonework. The bids were great. They were favorable, and we had a very good discussion about how we could best select portions of the bid, including alternates, to best fulfill the goals and the scope of the work authorized by the 2018 bond. From that discussion, the committee is providing a recommendation to the board to award 2 of the contracts at the middle school, high school, and to reject the third. So there are 3 contracts, and they're broken up in a couple different ways. The first contract that we're recommending for award is the roof and parapet work at the middle school annex. This is probably the most critical work that we see that needs to be done at that complex. And that's also the largest award, but this is very important that we get that work going. And the second contract that is also very important is the high school masonry. So this is contracts 2 and contract 1 that we'll be awarding. Contract 3, which is the middle school copings and flashings, while it is still important work and work we want to have done under this bond, we're going to hold on that work at this moment. We also talked a lot about Prospect Hill, and at this point we're still looking into options on how best to start work on that project given the current climate. So that's pretty much the discussion that I have, and I know Jim will be able to provide more detailed information about the proposals that are coming forward and summarize everything very officially. So I appreciate all of his input on this. And if anyone has questions, just let me know.
Thanks, Jess. John or Sue, anything that you want to add?
No, I think Jess covered it well.
Great, thank you so much. So this brings us to the Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning. Steve, I know you have a lot of updates for us.
Yeah, I just want to unmute myself. So good evening, everyone. Yes, we have a lot of updates, a lot of things to kind of go through. First of all, I wish everyone the best of health. And I know that Dr. Champ mentioned this already. In a few weeks, we were called upon to construct an entirely new school system. This continues to be the greatest challenge of our careers, and in other ways, the greatest challenge of our lives. So I want to thank the parents and the students for their patience and their engagement in this learning process. So as we move through several stages, we appreciate the community for giving us the opportunity to develop a more substantial approach. We launched that approach today. As we mentioned before, there are many technical issues, but I think we were able to kind of work around them over time. We continue to face unprecedented and also unknown challenges. The teachers have been wonderful partners in these efforts. There's a lot of discussions with them and the collective bargaining in this whole process, but they really have been really great partners. Overall, the themes that we think about as this evolves, as from the outset back in February, right after February break, we started mulling these ideas over. What happens if? What do we do if? And that's when we really began some discussions with administrators and staff developers about, what can we do in the short term and what can we do in the long term? Because we knew that we had some disadvantages. So we kind of came up with a short term and then also something we feel a little more confident in the long term, which started today. So really the themes we're kind of focusing on is what are the ways that we could bring a sense of normalcy to the families, to the children who are basically in shock and they're very isolated. So another key theme is about personalization. What are ways that we can make it more personable for the child and also for the teacher to make that human contact, which is now totally missing in their lives. Another key piece is having patience so we can kind of evolve and learn over time what are some best practices, what are things we should change. And another big idea, which will come, I think, into fruition in my discussion a little later on, is the concept of holding children harmless for what's happened to them. So, we're attempting to find a balanced approach for families, balanced approach for children, balanced approach also for our faculty and staff. We're trying to utilize the best technology and the options which are out there to facilitate learning. So this new plan really incorporates, I think, from what we've seen, one of the more robust and one of the most active teacher-student live interactions, which are known in the region. This may evolve over time. Still, there's so much more to learn about assessing children, about accountability for children, about social emotional learning needs, and also, again, the concept of finding a balance. We should expect technological challenges along the way, like we did today. These are new experiences for teachers, students, and family. And, there was an interesting article in the New York Times today that one of my colleagues shared with me was this whole concept of screen time. And I don't know if anyone saw this article, but it's titled Coronavirus Ended the Screen Time Debate, Screens Won. So whether that's good or bad in the long run, we're not sure. We just know that in this community, like most other communities, one thing we heard a lot about, and even most recently, I know John Savalas had a discussion with PTAs, elementary PTAs. I think that was at Silenoy about a week before we closed. And still that fear of screen time and what that does to the child and their brains. So, we're very cognizant of that in Pelham, like in most communities. And I think that kind of did hold us to a little bit of a disadvantage at the outset. I think that today kind of gave us the ability to kind of try that catch up. Just some statistics that John Savalas shared with us. And really, I can't reiterate enough the work that and the time that he's put in. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears to kind of make this a reality for us, and also the building administrators and all the administrators for their support. But in less than 1 week, we went to Google Classroom K5 for every classroom teacher. And in one day, we added 1,500 users across the district. Um, there was some technical challenges, but I think that's sort of expected. But the key for us was to move away from more of a static approach to where the parents and the children can actually connect directly to their classroom teacher. And again, we'll get some feedback and we'll learn more of how it could, evolve over time. But we definitely want to thank the teachers for, understanding that need for more contact with the children and the parents. So that's just my overarching thought. Before I get into some specifics in terms of some items which may be up for discussion tonight, does anyone have any questions about kind of like what we went through first and what we're looking to do now? Okay. Okay, so the first item that we want to bring to the board's attention, which is actually a resolution tonight. I'm sorry. Did I miss anything, or are we good? Okay. So
You're good.
okay, good. So one item, sorry, this is it. This is the live classroom that we have going on multiple times a day. So one item is 6.9, which is going to be brought to the board for a vote, is a waiver for the community service requirement in light of these times. May I ask Janine Clark to kind of talk a little bit to that about that for us?
Sure, Dr. Garcia. We have a graduation requirement that students must perform 40 hours of service learning by the conclusion of their senior year to satisfy this graduation requirement. And since obviously we do not want our students to go out and volunteer their time right now in this situation that we're all in, I'm proposing and hoping that the Board of Ed will maybe vote to waive this requirement for this year's graduating seniors. I worry about their health and safety, and I'd rather have them focus on how their online learning currently, and maybe put a stop to this requirement just for this year's seniors. They're required to have 40 hours by the time they're finished their senior year, and they can begin collecting their hours at 8th grade. So we have 235 seniors that potentially will be graduating, and 130 of those still have not even done what they need to do to finish this requirement. And 32 of the 138 they do not even have 1 hour toward their learning. So usually in the spring, I have to have lots of meetings with them one-to-one to encourage them to accomplish this requirement prior to the graduation. So in light of the situation we're in now, I'm asking that the Board of Ed waive this requirement for this year only.
Okay, so that will be a resolution that the board will look at 6.9 later on. With that vein, there are a lot of secondary issues we're trying to get some resolution to tonight, which I know parents are definitely asking about and kids are asking about. So another item is really about the college process, and a lot of junior parents, we receive a lot of phone calls.
Steve?
Yes.
A bunch of people have texted that they can't hear you quite as well. Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So one item that we want to talk about is the college planning process. Of an update of what's going on with that and how this coronavirus could actually affect students and the processes which are in place to kind of help the students. So I'm going to ask Gene Farrell if he can make some comments about what he knows.
I think he's muted.
Yeah, Gene, you're muted right now. You have to unmute.
Sorry, guys. How's that?
Good.
So not unlike some of the discussions we've had in dealing with some of the difficulties within our school district and decisions that we've had to make, colleges are obviously faced with some of the same discussions and uncertainties as to how to move forward. So I guess what I'd like to kind of do is just kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing overall, as far as keeping our eyes on listservs and emails and contacting colleges, the information trickles. It comes out slowly. We're getting bits and pieces of things, and we're using that information with both our seniors, who counselors are working with through the Google Hangouts, and also our juniors, and having conversations that way too. So we're in regard to our seniors and looking at today, April 1 is the official day that colleges should be getting back to all the students with their decisions. So a lot of the information that we're working with now with the students are regarding making decisions, working with colleges on possible wait lists, acceptances, celebrations. We're also working a little bit because of the virus and some of the information that some of the hardships that are coming out with the financial hardships, with unfortunately some of the families that may have lost jobs or employment. So deposits and things like that are certainly being rethought, and scholarships and opportunities to be rethought as well for the colleges. Deadlines have been extended, so May 1 is a traditional day for people to deposit because of the hardship, because of some of the typical accepted students days. I have a senior myself, and we're trying to get to some of the schools for acceptance students days, but obviously we can't get on campus to visit some of those things. So colleges are getting very creative with some of podcasts and streaming situations and things like that too. So it's a little bit of a different environment that we're used to working in, but we're able to serve the students, and we're doing a lot of work with this new format that we have with the Google Hangout. So that's been tremendous. Our juniors, we sent out a survey when things, once we were unable to get in the building anymore. And so we got a good sense of where everybody is. We're trying to reach out to our juniors. We got through a lot of our junior college planning meetings, but a lot we did not. And so we wanted to get a sense of, we were doing things actually through Google Hangouts once again with families, with our traditional college meeting, talking about what the criteria were and things like that too. What we did find out was there's an awful lot of kids out there who did not get to sit for any standardized test, an SAT or an ACT. So part of that is still on hold, and we're trying to wait and advise. So right now there's the April test is pushed to June 13th, and there's going to be a for the ACT, and then July 18th there'll be an ACT. The May 2nd test of the SAT has been canceled, but there will be we're hoping for a June administration. We've also been in touch with the College Board, and it seems like they're looking to add dates over the summer as well. We already know there's an August date, which we would look to host as well too. So I reached out to Mr. Ferrari, our testing coordinator, and he's willing to look at that and see if we could possibly offer another SAT possibly during the summer to give some students the opportunity to take the exam for those schools. We've been monitoring some of the test optional schools. We've gotten about 20 schools who have recently gone test optional. So we continue to monitor what the testing policies are for some of these schools. And it's a slow trickle, and it's a wait and see approach for some of that stuff as well too. As far as what schools are saying, we're hearing lots of different things. Generally speaking, colleges are saying they understand. Colleges are saying they understand that there's a circumstance here in which they everybody understands what's going on. They're going to continue to look at things holistically. They're going to continue to look at things through the lens of understanding that everybody's been through lots of different hardships, and so they're accustomed to working at things holistically, and they'll continue to do so. So that's the feedback I'm seeing in a lot of the listservs with a lot of the schools. So I guess I'll leave it at that for now, and then if you guys have questions, I certainly could go ahead and answer those questions also.
I just had two really quick questions. One, in terms of the cycle of the work you do, had you guys done any of your or all of your scheduling for next year with students at this point?
Yes, we have. We
Great.
got that in. Yes. Yes.
I know that happens earlier and earlier, so we
Yeah.
just got that one
Yeah.
in. And the
Yeah.
other question was, you know, when you spoke about all these rescheduled SATs and ACTs, all I could think of is, will there be enough seats for students? You know, there's gonna be a mass of students who need to take these tests in the spring and summer. What have you heard in terms of, are they opening more testing sites?
We haven't heard a lot, and I would anticipate a backlog of that. The only thing I would just say to that point is that if we were to offer it in Pelham schools, we do have discretion to save a significant amount of seats for our students. So we were unable to offer, it seems like, the May test. So maybe we could reschedule that with, through coordination with the College Board, and offer a test that would be open more seats to our own students first.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Okay, Gene, there's another topic we want to talk about, our AP exams, because that seems to be another one of those areas which are in constant motion. But we did get some information about how the AP is going to give parents an option to basically get their money back. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. We're getting information that's slowly trickling in from here and there, but the AP is going to continue and it's going to be offered. It's going to, for a one-time exception, instead of the traditional paper test, which we would coordinate. Students will be able to take a 45-minute online exam, just free response. So the information is still forthcoming on that information. It'll cover everything which was on the syllabus or what they projected to be covered through the month of March. They'll be able to take it on any device. They're going to publish the full schedule with a late date and a later date, which we don't know what that is. Students will have the option to choose whatever date they want. And to Dr. Garcia's point, they'll also be able to be reimbursed if they choose not to take that test as well too.
So that's a change for us, right? So we've always required kids, if they're in an AP class, to take the test. And with the fact that the AP is offering parents and children their opportunity to get reimbursed, not to take the test, in that whole harmless attitude that we have, we're going to, it's our recommendation at the high school to allow students and parents make that choice not to take the AP exam this year. They're still in the class, right? They're still going to have the AP identification on their transcript. However, we believe it's probably best that each family makes that determination themselves, and they will inform the schools in that fashion. But we're asking to really make that a one-time exception for this year to create that flexibility in light of the crisis that we're facing right now. We think that's fair, and that's something which we want to hold kids and families harmless in that approach.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I don't know if you want me to speak, Steve, to this, but yeah, absolutely. Sure. We're in a funny place right now. We're getting lots of feedback in lots of different directions on this. That just like the grading, which we'll speak about a little bit later on. We want to offer students, we don't want it to be a missed opportunity, but there's a lot of, it's going to be done independently. It's going to be done on their own. It's going to be a family decision. They can be reimbursed anyway. It's really something, typically it would be under my realm as far as being able to manage it and managing the expectation that we want all students to take the exam as part of the course. But due to this circumstance we're in right now, it's hard to understand or know exactly what they're learning or what they're ready for at their home.
But one thing to caveat is that the teachers are still preparing the kids for these exams. That has not gone away. It's just in lieu of the fact that the AP is giving everyone the option to basically get reimbursed and not have to take the exam. We felt it was necessary to at least pass that off also to the students, and they'll be held harmless in that fact.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Garcia, they're
Yes.
still receiving grades by the end of the year, so we're continuing on with that process. That's also something important to mention.
Yes.
Sorry, Jean, maybe this is what Janine just said, but I didn't understand. So you said that the test will be online, it will be 45 minutes, and it will be free response. Are they planning to give the same type of number grades based on that test, or how are they going to do that? Do you know?
I would assume I mean, from what I can see, it seems like they would be giving number grades, but that hasn't been explicitly stated to me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So the next major item that people have been asking us about, rightfully so, have been about at the secondary level, the quarterly grades, right? So originally when we closed schools, I stated in the letter that we needed time to assess it. So it was never really stated we were just going to get rid of third quarter grades. It was, we just needed time to figure out what this means for us and how we should come up to some sort of fair resolution to the third quarter, because we pretty much, went through about halfway through the quarter with the third quarter when we closed. So, these are the administration team have been talking about this for days and if not weeks. We've also been monitoring other school districts and what they've been doing and recommending. And to be honest with you, there's no set standard out there. Every school district is trying to determine what's best for their own communities. And again, so I'm going to read to you our thoughts and what we would like to move forward with. And it's all under that philosophy of do no harm to the child. We want to make sure it's fair and equitable. So this would count for the high school and also for the middle school for third quarter. So the third quarter ends April 3rd, 2020, which is Friday. So the high school and the middle school will issue third quarter grades based on work as of March 20th, 2020. That was the last day of live learning. Okay, but
March 12th.
I'm sorry, I apologize. March 12th, 2020. That was the last day we're actually live learning. But this is the key piece to it. Students may still complete missing third quarter assignments, and they have until April 17th to complete that work. And that gives us the ability to, students to work with teachers and try to complete assignments that were incomplete during this time of crisis. It's our thought process to close the portal on April 17th for the third quarter at 3 p.m. And then it will be reopened at 3 p.m. on April 23rd. And this is really the key piece for parents to understand and for kids to understand. Families will then have a choice between receiving a traditional numerical grade, or if they feel that they want to do something else in lieu of that because it was too difficult for them to complete tasks, to go to a pass-fail option. So again, the students and families will have a choice whether they want to receive a traditional numerical grade for the third quarter, or if they feel that they couldn't get to the assignments and it was too difficult because of their family situation under this crisis, they could say, you know what, maybe it's better for my son or my daughter to just go with a pass-fail option. Now, one caveat, remember, is that middle school grades are letter-based, right? They're not numerical. And it still falls into play with the same rule, with the exception of those 8th grade high school credit-bearing courses. Okay, so I don't know if any of the administrators want to talk a little bit about the mentality behind that approach, or just going to bring a little thought to that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. This is Janine from the high school. I think everyone needs to understand that we felt that we really needed to give our students the benefit of the doubt and understanding their own home situations. As Dr. Champ alluded to earlier, we're very, very concerned about this health situation of some of our families in the community and the financial hardships. We've also got students that they took a while for us to connect with them at their homes. And it could have been something like they forgot their Chromebook or a book or the charger. That could be a technology piece. So our guidance staff last week connected with some of the students that were missing. So there was quite a number of children at the high school that we needed to sort of locate, and we're still in that situation now. So that was one other factor that drove us to this decision, that we didn't want to have any child suffer due to the negative consequences of this crisis that we're in right now.
Yes, hi. It's Lynn here. Speaking for the middle school, we felt the same way. Our guidance counselors, myself, Sean Llewellyn, teachers, we've been reaching out to students, and we've had really good contacts. And we're finding that there are a lot of families that are having a tremendous amount of difficulty because their own families are ill. Some families have lost loved ones to this virus. So in order to be as fair as we could to each child, we feel like this approach, having them work with their counselor and the parents to decide whether they get the grade or they get the pass fail, was the most fairest thing that we can do. And we're going to continue to support the students.
And I would add that this plan also goes hand in hand with our plans for next week, where we're allowing time for students to make up work that they haven't completed. It ties right into the same discussion.
I've also received some, many emails about a lot of things, but, about how, there was this fear, there was this rumor rampant, and we don't know where it came from, that we were just going to go with a pass fail option for third quarter and call it a day. That was never the case. We've just been trying to figure out what would be the fairest way for children who, who really did a lot of work and raised the grades and things have gone very well for them in the third quarter. We didn't want them to all of a sudden have to not have an option for like they're getting their numerical grade. But then again, as Janine said, and also as Lynn said, we have a number of students who are just kind of coming literally back online after a few weeks. And we wanted to make sure we gave them an opportunity to succeed as well. And so that we thought that this is for the third quarter, the fairest option that we should really recognize the challenges many families have, and with that notion of holding the families and the children harmless in that fashion.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this, given that in some classes you might have work to make up and in others you might not, is this a class by class decision, or you're deciding for all of your classes your grade or pass fail, or what is that?
This will be for all classes that this is option for.
But you would be able to make that decision class by class.
Oh yes, I apologize. Yes.
Okay.
It's not like for the whole,
Right.
every single class. Yes, that's a great point, that certain students in math may be all set and ready and get that numerical score, but in science it may be a different story. I think that flexibility is very important. I think the team feels the same way.
Thank you.
It seems that because we really only missed out on just a few weeks of the third quarter, so much work was completed, and this seems like a very fair approach in recognizing all the hard work that was put in on behalf of our students up until the school closure, and also being cognizant, as you said, of the range of issues that our families are dealing with. Everybody's household, I've heard from so many families of all grade levels, and everybody's stress is extremely different. And I think it's important for families, everybody comes to this situation with their own concerns and anxieties based on their particular children, but we're making decisions that are based on the needs of a K through 12 system, and those needs are so varied right now, and these are completely unprecedented times that are putting families in very difficult situations. So on this topic and many, I've heard such a range of opinions, and I think it's important. I'm glad that you've weighed them all, and I just think it's important to recognize that these are very tough decisions because of those range of experiences and concerns that people are bringing to us.
Yes. So another piece, of course, is now what happens in the fourth quarter. So the fourth quarter begins on April 6th, right? That's the official date. And then we will move forward with more typical assessment approaches, away from the complete incomplete method that we've been sort of holding in place for the past few weeks. That's our intention. There's a lot of growth still with teachers and trying to understand and unpack what that assessment process looks like. And it's easier in some areas than not. In other areas, it's more difficult. The region is still talking about, how are you assessing kids and how are you coming up with grades, and that's an ongoing learning experience for us. Like I said, there is certain areas and certain subject matters are easier to kind of come up with an assessment than others. Um, but one thing we have to really be cognizant of is that changes in the environment may impact our efforts. We don't know what will happen in people's homes or how this crisis may impact families. So we just have to be flexible in that manner. But we do have intentions to kind of go back to quote unquote typical approaches of assessment for our kids. Um, and another piece to this is the unknown. When and if we return to school, that when that happens and how that happens will inform any possible changes to weighting and also maybe even final exams. Um, we still have to work that out because we don't know if we come back earlier, later. Will we come back in May or June or late in April? We don't know yet. So if we make finite decisions now about the end of the year and grading, I think that would be a great disadvantage for us as a district, but specifically for families and kids. So we're trying to keep that more flexible. And unfortunately, as it makes people nervous, but as time will tell whether we should do certain things to help our kids more so than kind of just make a rash decision today about fourth quarter, end of the year. Are any questions about that from the board? This will all be put in writing. I know the principal is going to be sending out a communication tomorrow about this, specifically to parents and for children, so they can understand better and maybe even ask any further questions about it at that time.
And in that letter, you'll communicate how students or parents will notify the school about their decision.
Yes, we talked about that actually today. We'll talk. We're going to communicate that, make sure that people understand. They'll make that decision whether they want to get a pass fail or get a numerical grade. We'll talk about that process.
So they'll be able, Dr. Garcia, when we open up the portal, they'll be able to see the numerical grade at that time, and then and then within so many days or whatever, then the parents will determine if they want to continue with that grade or change it to a pass, basically.
Okay. But also just remember, I mean, this is all a learning experience for us too. We want to make sure that, if we miss something or, if there's a mistake or we have to be flexible enough to have that conversation and be open to, discussing that with parents if there's an issue that we weren't cognizant of just because of the unruly nature of the situation. One really positive note we just want to talk about. I'm going to call in Dr. Callahan to talk about this, but there's an event tomorrow night that we're really excited about. I know this is totally out of left field, but the work still continues and the children are still really engaged in learning. So Tom, if you're there, could you just talk about tomorrow night's experience?
Yeah, so obviously this virus has robbed our kids of a lot of the social experiences they tend to have as part of school that are both kind of social and academic, whether it's like sporting events or theater. For us on the science side of things, it's kind of robbed us of our opportunity to share out our students, especially our seniors, research projects. So we've been grappling, Steve Beltakis and I, with how we can still celebrate our students' work. And in thinking about all the people that might be at home looking for things beyond Netflix to tune into, we thought it might be a great opportunity to share with the community and with really all of the kids in our research program the work that our seniors have done throughout their careers in our research program. So we've actually teamed up with Mamaroneck Schools, who also has a science research program, and we're going to have a science research live event tomorrow night at 7 p.m. where the kids will present their research. We'll have kids from Mamaroneck and students from Pelham present for about an hour. Each presentation will be about 5 minutes. And again, the public will be welcome to join us. We're looking to have the kids be able to do a little bit of a Q&A, and then also for the community to live stream in, hopefully through YouTube, but definitely through this platform that we're using. This platform accommodates up to about 250 people. So we're hoping that people can join us tomorrow night, 7 p.m. We'll be sending out a communication in the morning with a link that you can use to come in and see some of the work that our kids have really spent a tremendous amount of time on, and to look at this as an opportunity to kind of bring our community together, even though social distancing is still in effect. So hopefully we can celebrate our kids online instead.
Thanks, Tom.
Such a good way for our younger students to see what science research is all about. They may get intrigued.
It is. So that's a part of it too. So we're excited too that another school can join us, because some of the seniors have seen each other's presentations and they weren't able to go to WESF this year, our science and engineering fair in the region. So this kind of brings that element to it as well, where they get to kind of interact with people from other schools too and celebrate some really great work.
Thanks, Tom. So just in summary, just again, we want to thank everyone in the community for their patience and understanding. We're always trying to find that balanced approach that will be good for everyone. And we know for a fact that, we start with a process where we are now. It's not going to necessarily satisfy everyone's needs. And we're very cognizant of that as parents. We're home with our kids, and we're trying to find the right spot, and we're trying our best. And this is definitely something which we're evolving with. And we will send out a more formal sense of a survey for feedback to parents and students and teachers in the upcoming weeks, just so we can kind of at least get some legs under our current approach and kind of understand what people are seeing at home, and the engagement with their kids and their experience. So that's going to be coming up, because we want to hear from everyone at home as well. We already have been hearing from a lot of parents, but this is not something we ever expected to do, and we appreciate the board's support in all of our endeavors. And we also personally want to thank all the administrators again for their tireless efforts. They go on marathon meetings and on the Google Hangouts for hours, 10 hours, 5 hours, 12 hours a day sometimes. So it's all because we want to try to make a better system and a better approach for our families and for our children. And we won't rest until we feel that, we have a sound approach, and we're going to just continue to do our best. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I know that's heartfelt, and you've had a tremendous amount of work. So reiterate what I said before. We really appreciate that. So this brings us to 4.4, which is the Assistant Superintendent's update on the whole child. Julia.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to start out by thanking the community for doing their best to balance both the home and work lives for now going on for 3 weeks, which has been extremely challenging for everyone. To update you in terms of the special education services, I want to first recognize that the current situation is difficult for all students and families, but especially difficult for students with disabilities. As we're asking parents to support the academics at home, we know that most of the parents don't have the level of expertise or the support that the students have in school. So keeping that in mind, our teachers and related service providers have all been working diligently to provide service to the extent possible, obviously, keeping in mind that different families and different family circumstances require different modes of delivery of services. So we have been utilizing Google Meet, phone calls, recorded videos, packets of information being mailed home, and just continuing to make changes as needed in delivering the services as we hear from parents. In terms of the annual review meetings, other than the first couple of days since the schools closed, we have been trying our best to keep the meetings as scheduled to the extent possible. However, the new distance learning schedule it is going to cause more scheduling as we want to ensure that our teachers are available for direct instruction. So there may be more reschedules, but we will do our best to continue to make progress in that area. Any of the initial or reevaluation meetings that require a in-person evaluation are going to be have to be on hold until we return to school. And of course, if we don't have too many days of school left, we're going to have to reassess that as well. Our case managers and chairpersons will be contacting families as we schedule these meetings. But please know that we're only really looking at meetings that have already been scheduled, and we're only really looking at a couple of weeks in advance because we really don't know what the future holds. So we will just kind of make changes and decisions as we go, but we'll be looking at about 2 weeks in advance at a time. In regard to supporting various needs of all of our families in the community, our 3 social workers have taken the lead to be the contact for the district, and they've been connecting the families with various resources in the community, like Dr. Champ had mentioned before, Pelham Together, the Junior League, and the Civics. And of course, our social workers, psychologists, and counselors are all available to students who need support. Please reach out to them. Their information, if you don't have it already, I know the social workers' information have been part of Dr. Champ's communication, but if you go to the PPS staff page, all of their information is there as well. Especially during these times, I do want to stress the importance of everyone's well-being, both physically and mentally. Various resources for students and families have been shared at the building levels by the psychologists, but we also have resources on the district's website. We're actually currently working on revising the website to add more information. So the updated resources section will be on the coronavirus information page on the website, and it should be up sometime tomorrow. And like I said, it'll have additional resources, and it'll be divided up by category so that it'll be easier for parents to find links to. And my last thought for tonight is just to remind everyone that as we're all coping with this current normal as adults, please remember that children and teens take their lead from us as adults. Please model good practices, calmness, maintain an open dialogue, and periodic check-ins with your children, as they may not always know how to come to you to discuss, the concerns or the fears that may have. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So next is 4.5, Assistant Superintendent's Update on Finance and Facilities. Jim.
Hi, good evening to everybody. Wow, I'm looking at the clock. My watch says 10 o'clock right now. So if we were flying to LA, we'd be unbuckling our seatbelts right now. We'd be there if we took off 5 hours ago. So I'll try to be brief, but I do have to cover a number of things here this evening. Just so folks know, with everything that's been happening, the state has extended the deadline for out-of-district transportation for next year. That deadline was going to be today, April 1st. That's been extended to April 15th, and we have been receiving those applications from folks. We've been getting them email. We're responding to folks' email, but just so people do know, we are extended for another 15 days. With that, the governor also extended our budget vote and budget board elections to looks like June 2nd right now, and we've been getting more guidance out on that as well. Just like Dr. Champ said, we get the news, we kind of wait a little bit, and then a few days later we get a little bit more information, and that's what's been happening with the budget vote. And just this evening before the meeting, we learned a little bit more about the schedule as to when that's going to take place. The guidance I'm seeing is June 2nd. And we're gonna continue to work through the budget as we do that. In the midst of everything that was happening over the last 2 weeks, the business office, I probably should have gone back at the beginning and said this. What's happened over the last 2 weeks really just reinforces what we already knew, that the people that we work with at Pelham are really tremendous people. We really work for a great community because as we struggled through this and things changed, members of the community stepped up and said, we're one community. How can we help here? And really the people who work for the school district stepped up just the same and said, I've got to do my job. we have to help the kids, and let's move forward. I mean, we want to make sure everybody's taken care of and well, and we've had good luck there, and we're very grateful for that too. So it really has been tremendous. And as we did that over the last 2 weeks on St. Patrick's Day, we had a successful $10 million band sale so that we could continue with our capital project and pay some of those bills. And these are for bonds that will be maturing in November when we plan to go out for our larger bond sale. Did very well, a total interest cost of just over 1.5%. And there was a lot going on in the financial markets at that time. So we were very fortunate with what happened. And I think Pelham's reputation as a strong credit risk really paid off as well. With that, I know this evening we had originally scheduled to have Rick Yancey from Capital Market Advisors come and speak to the board about our borrowing plans. As we scheduled our other meetings prior to this, and the meeting could have grown very long. We'll try to keep it out of keep it from going over 6 hours. We have rescheduled Rick to come back at the April 22nd meeting by video conference, and he'll be able to share and update the board where the market is right now and where our future borrowing looks for the capital project. On tonight's board agenda, we've got some treasury reports we're just updating. We canceled our last meeting, so of course we're just cleaning up some of the other work that was left out from the prior meetings. We also have some budget transfers. These are in support of the band sale that I've talked about. Some of it is for some textbook purchases, which were required as a result of what's happened over the last few weeks. And the other is to support some retirement incentives and put our finances in order so that we can take care of the folks who will be retiring and they receive that incentive in their retirement. We're asking the board to officially amend our purchasing ordinance to allow for expedited purchasing for COVID-related items. We have not had to do this yet, but what it really does is it allows us to not have to follow the formal bidding process if we have to do something very quickly related to the COVID-related items. Also on the agenda this evening, we're asking the board to accept notification of 3 change orders that happened for the work at the Hutchinson School. The total for those items were $32,000, and they were related to some additional rock chipping, which was one day that happened at Hutchinson. Once they started digging for the footings, they had to take out some more rock. And then they also found some unsuitable soils as well that had to be removed and replaced with suitable soil. So the combination of those 3 is just over $32,000. These all fall within the acceptable range where the board allows the administration to move these change orders forward without stopping the project, which was very important. And but with that, there is a notification requirement, and that's why we have that on the agenda this evening. So as we move forward with our capital projects for items that fall under the $50,000 threshold for change orders, you'll see these notifications. We do expect a larger one for between $60,000 and $75,000 to be coming forward as well for additional rock and soils. Triton is currently working to make sure the pricing is appropriate, and when that is ready, that'll have to come before the board. As just mentioned, we had 2 bond steering committee meetings over the last week. They were to discuss the results of the last bids, which were for the high school, middle school, the roofing, the roof replacement, the masonry, and the flashing at the middle school, as well as the addition at Prospect Hill, the interior renovations at Prospect Hill, and the site work at Prospect Hill. In the midst of doing all of this, we did receive the order from the state put out the latest order for a larger pause in folks that are working for non-essential work. So at this time, we are recommending to the board that you approve the work at the annex building, at the middle school, as well as the masonry at the high school. And we're still working on that Prospect Hill work to see if it's feasible or appropriate to award it at this time. And we'll have to come back to the board and make a recommendation with the architect and the construction manager at that time. Just want to talk a little bit about when everything started happening. I really have to say we had some great work from the business office. Working from home is not the easiest for a lot of folks, and all of our work right now, we are fully operational at the business office. Everyone in the business office has been provided a laptop computer with VPN access so they can access their files from home. But there's always some work that has to be done in the office. So what we are doing as an office is we are rotating our staff to make sure we don't have everybody in the office, and we're maintaining appropriate social distancing, and we're making sure that all the work that is getting done. Aster Dennison, who does our payroll for the district, did an unbelievable job of making sure that our payroll for all of our employees was established. 2 payrolls were set up so that people in this very unsettled times, uh, that was one less thing they had to worry about. And she really did tremendous work working and supported with the other folks and staff in the business office. I think it provides a nice backbone to the folks who work in the school district, knowing that they're taken care of, and that's going to everything is seamless and transparent. And that's really important at this time. With that, we're also paying our vendors, and we're running our checks for services that are rendered. We want to make sure that our vendors are still there when we get through the other end of this, and we paid all we do that on a monthly basis, and we just did that this week. So we are continuing our business processes, and we're maintaining as close to a normal cycle of business as we can with our staff. Again, we rotate it in and out. We coordinate our times, and between our work at home and in the office, we're able to take care of it. Should also say, and Dr. Champ mentioned it, we are doing food services every day at Hutchinson School between the hours of 8 and 10. Whitson's is running this service. They're our food service management company. We have not had a large participation, but please, I want to make sure everybody understands that you don't have to be on free or reduced lunch. The meals are free. If you come between 8 and 10 o'clock at Hutchinson, Monday through Friday, we'll provide you with grab-and-go breakfast and lunch at the same time. So you just have to be a student in the Pelham schools, and you're eligible. So if people feel the need that they want to do that, that's certainly available to everybody. And if you know folks who may be struggling or need that opportunity, it's there. And you just come right off the 3rd Street entrance at Hutchinson. You walk up the stairs, and they're right there every day, 8 to 10. If there's any other challenges in getting there, please reach out to our social workers and our PPS department, and we can make sure that folks are going to be taken care of. And we plan on sending out a separate communication specifically for food services in the near future, tomorrow or the next day. Lastly, on the agenda for tonight, terrific donations from the PEF again, totaling $28,000. If the last 2 weeks doesn't tell you how terrific the community is, certainly the PEF and their work tells us that every month as well. So just really, again, terrific participation and showing from the PEF in supporting the children of the district. One other part I just want to share with you is a little bit of an update on our budget with where we are. This afternoon, we were told that it looks like they have a deal at the state for next year's budget, and that will impact our state funding. As we looked at the initial information, it looks like the funding that's going to come from the state is going to be about $241,000 less than when we originally proposed in the budget that was provided in the state aid run of January 22nd. The biggest part of that reduction is the reduction in the foundation aid of about $225,000, and then smaller amounts in BOCES aid and in our building aid. There's another about $8,500 reduction. So we're looking to identify exactly where what these impacts means to our revenue. We're also looking at our other revenue categories that are market sensitive. As you know, we receive sales tax, a portion of sales tax from the county, which we've been warned by the county is going to have an impact. So we're going to check for, we're checking on that. Got a meeting with my counterparts for the other school districts tomorrow afternoon. And that's been one of the bigger questions that we've all been asking ourselves. We know it's going to be less. How much do you think it's going to be less? Is it going to be 10%, 30%, 50%? I think us having a conversation will be able to provide the boards with some better guidance once we all get an understanding of where we are. We're a little bit fortunate in that last year, the state increased the district's share of sales tax, so that can help temper some of that decrease. But we still are going to expect a little bit of a decrease there. We're also going to see decreases in our interest income. We all know with the Fed dropped the rates, the overnight income is minimal. We didn't have a heck of a lot in the budget to start with, but we would still expect that we may have to make another adjustment there moving forward. And then we receive some funding back through the Arts and Education Program. It's usually on a year lag time period, so we'll have the expenditures this time of year, and we'll receive the monies back next fiscal year. Well, with school being out of session right now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to run those arts and education programs, which then means we were not spending the money this year, but then in turn, we won't have that revenue coming back to us next fall. So we had our data up to December. We're going to go ahead and look at it in January and February and see what the full impact of that is. So as we look at the impacts to our revenue that we know of right now, we see that there could be an impact anywhere from $450,000 to just under $1 million. And once we get a better look into what the total impact is, then Dr. Champ and then the assistant superintendents and I and the other administrative team we'll sit down and we'll put together recommendations for future and options for the board to take for future recommendations for the budget moving forward, so that we can do that. The tax cap, we also have an updated tax cap, which I will share with the board as well. The original tax cap had a potential tax cap increase of 3.15%. One thing that changed is with our band sale 2 weeks ago, we did not receive the premium that we had expected to receive before all of this happened. So in effect, what that happens what that has happened is it increases the amount of our debt service that we would have to pay, because we have less amount of a premium to help pay for that debt service. So if you chose not to tap the debt service reserve, you could have a maximum tax increase of 3.31%. Understanding what's happening out there, we'll certainly have options for the board so that they're appropriate. So you know what levers you can pull and what options you have as you move forward with the budget. So I think that's where I am right now. Happy to take any questions. And it's interesting. I'm sitting in my dining room, and you kind of don't see the flavor of everybody nodding or anything else. But I hope it was coherent and you got everything there.
Thank you, Jim. You also have been working super hard. That bond sale, we were working on the front steps of my house to talk about totally unprecedented times. So
It sure was.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
No, thank you, Jim. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next section is feels like another session given how long these meetings have been, is our policy monitoring and governance. We are in 5.1 covering policy 7131. This is our third reading of education of homeless children and the youth. Eileen, can you please speak to this?
Yes. So policy 7131, it's our third reading. Definitely nothing has changed since the second reading. And just as a reminder, nothing substantive changed in this iteration of this policy. It was more, they changed the name of the policy, and then we did our usual wordsmithing to change things like his and her to student or teacher or whatever, whatever was most appropriate. So, are there any questions? Since there aren't, Jess, I would recommend that we move ahead with a vote on this policy. I think you're
Jess,
muted.
you're muted.
Yeah. You're muted.
Sorry. So many things I'm juggling here with the two chairs and a corner of my house. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve policy 7131, education of homeless children and youth? Which this is our third reading, so do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
So I took Sue, thank you, as the first. What was the second?
Second, Eileen.
Eileen, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have another one in the bag, even during these crazy
Woo!
times. Thank you, Eileen, for that. Okay, keep going, then I'll ask you the question. So the next one
not
is
on
policy 7522, concussion management. This is also the third reading, correct?
Yes, it is the third reading, and again, nothing substantive changed here from the policy we had before, and definitely nothing has changed since the second reading. Any questions? Okay. So I also recommend we go ahead and vote on this one.
Okay, perfect. Do I have a motion to approve policy 7522, concussion management?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll take Eileen for the first and Jess for the second on that one. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Eileen, did you want were you doing the first reading of 6121?
So I did find my notes on that, and my last note, and maybe Millie, you can speak up, is that we were going to look at the new policy versus the policy that we had in place, and I don't think we ever ended up getting to that. So I think that we should hold off on this one, but Millie, maybe you can pipe in.
I didn't have those notes. My understanding was that it was just a couple of things that came down from the state. And as long as we were okay with that, we were moving forward with it because we did review this last year as well. So and it was just a couple of things from saying, you know, under New York State law, a little bit of language from them. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just say one thing is I just didn't recall, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, because it seems like a year ago when we looked at these you know, documents. So I would have to rely on Millie's recollection, her notes.
We did review this at length last year. I remember with Steve.
I know, but yes, we definitely
Right. Okay. I guess we should go ahead with the first reading, and if we can look
Eileen,
back.
I was gonna say, if you're not comfortable, we could always table it and come back next time with the first reading too. If we're not 100% resolved to
Well-
move ahead, feel free to table it.
Okay, I mean, I feel pretty confident in Millie's notes.
Okay.
And so I think we should do the first reading, and then maybe we can all take a minute to take a look at it again. I'll send out an email, and if we have to change anything for the second, I know that this one came from our policy service, so it's likely going to be what we had, very close to what we adopt, if not exactly. So I think we should.
I
we
just
should go
wanted
ahead
to
with the first reading.
add that we did go in as well and change the he, she, individual, all of that. So
Oh, great.
we had made those changes after we met last month.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to have this as our first reading. As I said, the committee worked on this at length last year. And so I imagine that the changes that were made were kind of state driven and some of those pronoun changes as you've been making with other policies.
Right. Okay.
Okay, one quick question or just something to throw out is we're going to have other policy meetings virtually in the coming weeks.
I assume we will. I
Okay.
have to say it wasn't top on my mind, but now that it is,
Yeah.
I think yeah, Millie, I'll be in touch with you to schedule that.
Our next policy meeting was scheduled for the week of the 20th. I believe it was the 22nd. So I We have something scheduled with Dr. Champ next week to speak about what we want to do with that, so we make sure we stay on schedule with
Okay.
Pelham as well.
That's
So we'll
great.
definitely loop you in on that after.
All right, good, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm pulling up my phone because there's been some changes here. Section 6 are the financial reports and motions, most of which were discussed through our assistant superintendent's reports. So I'm going to take a consent for 6.1 through 6.10. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Vinny. I'll do Vinny and John. Make it equitable. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 6.11 I'll take all on its own. This is the motion to accept a donation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Just pulling it up. Sorry, it's disappearing on my screen. I'd like to read it out loud though.
Jess, I can read that for you if you'd like. Would that help?
I just pulled it up, but that's perfect.
Oh,
It's
good.
small on
Okay.
my screen. Okay, so be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the Board of Education in Pelham, we do hereby accept the monetary donation of $26,480 for grant 2010 for a major grant to fund the purchase of a variety of percussion instruments, including bass chimes, xylophones, and concert tom-toms for the 4 elementary schools for their students to play during band instruction periods and for their performances, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. And be it further resolved that also upon the recommendation of the superintendents and the Board of Ed, that we do hereby accept the monetary donation of $2,250 for grant 2011 for a grant to fund a resume and interview prep workshop for 9th and 10th grade science research students to enable the students to be better prepared to approach potential mentors for internship opportunities, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. As Jim said, the PEF is always so extremely generous and very uplifting to see this kind of donation, especially during these times. So thank you for that. Okay. We took a vote on that, Millie?
No, just a
No?
motion.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'd like to take a consent for 6.12
Wait,
to 6.
sorry, Jess, sorry. No, you guys do have to do a first and a second for 6.11.
Sorry, I'm getting a little wonky here now. Do I have a first?
Yeah.
So
Do I have a
moved.
motion?
Second.
Who was the first?
That's me, and then Leah. Sue, and then
Okay,
Leah.
So Sue for the first and Leah for the second. Sorry to do that
Yeah.
out of order. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'd like to take a consent for 6.12 through 6.14. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Jess.
Second.
Thanks, Vinny. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, section 7 is superintendent's personnel recommendations. I'll take a consent 7.1 through 7.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
I'll take
Second.
okay. Leah and John. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Any additions from the superintendents, assistant superintendent?
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to recognize that Janet Williamson submitted her irrevocable letter of resignation effective June 30th, 2020. So we'll be celebrating, hopefully, those retirees in person at some point later in the spring. But we want to thank everything for her many years of service since 1994.
Wow.
And I just wanted to touch in, we have the appointment of Sharon Hanlon for the position of database specialist, replacing Svetlana Zadanova, who retired yesterday.
Wow.
And
Oh, too bad.
yeah, she's a wonderful lady.
Yeah, and we'll celebrate her as well. I
Yeah.
mean, she's been a huge part of this district years before I existed as well. So we wish her well because I know that she's been at home just like everyone else.
Yeah.
But she's still responding to emails. She's still active, let's say, in her role. To be honest with you, she still cares very much about our district.
It's wonderful. I know Sharon's been involved, I've been working within the district, so I imagine that will be a seamless entry for her.
We're very fortunate to have someone of Sharon's skills and talents for sure. I think it'll be a great fit. She's a wonderful person too.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Section 8, People Personnel Services. Do I have a motion to approve Schedule D?
So moved.
Thanks, Vinny.
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Section 9 is new business. We've covered a lot. Does anybody have anything else to add? No. Okay. Okay, bear with me for the communications from the public. We did have a few people write in, and the names and addresses didn't all come with the emails, so I have to dig a little bit. Okay, so 637 James Street from Joni Paradis. She said, we wanted to extend our sincere thanks to everyone who is involved in this amazingly organized distance learning undertaking. From the very first days, the message has remained measured, organized, and equitable among schools and faculty. You listened to feedback and adjusted the plan. It is simply amazing that this district could transform into a functional and effective online learning center so quickly. It's only possible with dedicated, smart leadership, which Pelham is so fortunate to have. Be well in this time of uncertainty with all of our support and admiration. That was from Joni and Mike Paradis, 637 James Street. Okay. Sarah Malik, 12 Garden Road. Hi, Jessica. I hope you and your family are well. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm not paraphrasing this, but I'll just read the whole email. Hope you and your family are well and you have been able to make your way through this challenging time with aplomb. I have refrained from emailing everybody with any feedback over these past few weeks because I've been quite sure that their inboxes are brimming full and they honestly didn't need to hear my 2 cents on any matter, since so much of where we are as a district is evolving day by day and so much is beyond everybody's control. I'm reaching out to you today to give my perspective as a parent of an 8th grader and a high school junior, since it seems that the BOE and administration has much to weigh with Governor Cuomo's interesting stance regarding spring break. Please know that our experience with only one actual day of classes has been wonderful, in all capitals. The new distance learning program with classes from 9 to 12:30 is just about perfect. My kids were engaged, connected, and really enjoyed their classes today. They genuinely appreciated the schedule with the little breaks. Honestly, it is exactly what they needed right now, and they're both looking forward to it tomorrow. Granted, I have 2 neurotypical, reasonably well-behaved children who are willing to self-motivate with what I would consider a not excessive amount of nagging and threats of separation from personal electronic devices. Maybe I can give her a couple of my children to weigh things out. So our experience might not be the same as others, and I can't speak to the elementary schedule. We would love for the district to keep classes in session over spring break. If there is a way to negotiate reduced teacher PD or videos of limited physical check-ins, including a hold on Friday academy hours or some other reasonable accommodations to be made for the teachers so that the morning hours can continue next week, my family would appreciate the continued consistency. I understand that this is a huge, in capital letters, ask of our educators who have been doing so much and working so diligently behind the scenes. And contracts notwithstanding, they're all very much deserving of the break, which I am reluctant to see denied. I don't envy the BOE and administration with navigating this difficult decision, but I just want to let you know our experience and how important maintaining this new schedule is for my family personally. Neither of my kids were keen on joining the Google Classroom hours that were in place previously because it felt very chaotic for them, and I was not comfortable forcing them into what was ultimately a stressful environment. But this environment seems to be much better, and I'm reluctant to see a disruption in this new routine so quickly after launch. Thanks for taking the time to read this email. Please also reach out if there's anything I can do for the BOE with regards to pushing out good information to the PTAs in my role as PTA Council Communications Chair. We'll be seeing her tomorrow. I'm working on Blast for the middle school and high school to go out soon. I was actually just waiting for final word on break before doing so. We're trying to be very mindful of how inundated everybody is these days. All my best always, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Let's see. I have a few more. Kara McLaughlin. I don't have her address. I believe she lives on Manor Circle. This is to the whole board. Thank you for volunteering your time to the Board of Education. Now more than ever, we need strong leadership to guide us through this pandemic. We do not understand why our neighboring towns, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Mamaroneck, and Bronxville, to name a few, have complied with the governor's executive order and canceled spring break, and we have not. The entire state of Rhode Island has canceled spring break. During the Board of Education meeting this evening, please explain how not complying with this order will impact our funding from the state. In addition, it's taken 3 weeks to get to a half day of true learning. My aunt, a high school math teacher for 35 years in Washington Township, New Jersey, has been providing full days of learning since March 16th, 2020. We are very much behind the curve with only 2.5 hours of learning per day at the secondary level. Furthermore, our children have stated that teachers are complaining to them about their workloads, the fact that spring break might be canceled, etc. This is not appropriate. Some teachers have gone above and beyond, providing videos, podcasts, and other creative solutions. However, many others have definitely not met the low threshold that has been set by our district by showing up late to class or ending early. All across the state, across the country, people are making sacrifices. It is time for Pelham to do the same. Please cancel spring break and require our teachers to provide e-learning instruction next week as per the governor's executive order. Thank you, Kara and Chris. I will be forwarding these emails to our administrative team. Just, we don't do a Q&A when we do public comment, but just so that people can respond as needed, although I know we've addressed a lot of this tonight. This is from Catherine Ahatow at 316 Corley's Avenue. Will it be possible for elementary to have more face-to-face time with their teachers? Also, how accepting / committed is the teachers union to supporting this new distance learning? And finally, Wendy Doherty at 494 Siwanwai Place. I'm very concerned that there will be no instruction next week. I was under the impression that with the governor's order, all schools in New York had to provide instruction. Not only does this make our district look bad, we are special because we do not need instruction, but also who is approving this? Have the constituents been asked if this is what they want? So thank you for everyone to write in. And as I said, I will be forwarding these questions on. And I know a communication is going out about spring break and hopefully some more clarifications about the schedule for next week. Cheryl, anything before we?
No, and I think and we'll definitely get back to those emails. And again, I just want to reiterate, we believe what we are doing next week is in compliant with what's been asked by the governor, and students will be receiving education next week in continuity of learning plan. And I'll be happy to share that with those folks who had concerns. So
thank you. Eileen, you're not sitting in your usual position, but
oh, here I am. Madam President, would you consider what do I say? Would you consider a motion to adjourn? Sorry.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or forever hold your peace? Going back to the length of our bond meetings.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Be
thanks
well.
everyone.
Good night.
Be
Be
well.
safe.
Good night, everyone.